Welcome to Mock 10 Sports, the September 27th, 2023 episode. We have a good one for you. Sit back real fast. Let me get this show link. We have two fantastic guests. Let me send it to both of them before we get rocking and rolling. And I will introduce you who these guests are. Perfect. All right, guys, let's get rocking and rolling here. Like I mentioned, we have a pushed up show today. Had some personal stuff come out, but that doesn't mean we're not going to get that second episode out to you this week. We're just pushing it up to Wednesday, guys. We just get to push it up a little bit more, give our predictions early, give our gambling picks early, just a day early. No big deal. As you know, it's Prediction Wednesday. It's usually Prediction Thursday, but it's Prediction Wednesday tonight. All 7 matchups, all 14 teams in conference action. First time this year, week 5. Best week of the season so far, in my opinion. Maybe not notable games, but from a conference standpoint of all 14 teams are in action. A big SEC West weekend, big SEC East action. We'll go into that. We also have 2 fantastic guests, and Carter Bryant from Power Hour LSU. Does a great job on YouTube. If you haven't checked it out, you need to. I'll give you his Twitter handle as we introduce him. Also, Rusty Mansell, Georgia fans know him, co-owner, producer of the DawgsHQ, Dogs headquarters, the Georgia Bulldogs on 3 website. Knows Kirby Smart really well. Does a fantastic job. He is the best guy to follow from a Georgia Bulldog standpoint. We'll bring both of them on to discuss, like I mentioned, LSU and Georgia. Thoughts so far. Preview the weekend matchups between LSU and Ole Miss and Georgia and Auburn. And as you know, it's Money Making Wednesday. It's usually Money Making Thursday. Turns into Money Making Wednesday. But we're here. We don't have as many bets as this next week. Because, again, I don't just pick 14. Just give 14. If I don't feel good about 14, I'm not going to give you 14. So it's Money Making Wednesday. We got about 8 of them. Feel real confident. Again, we went 9-4-1 last week. We're to 49% on the season. I told you, more film equals more dough. Start opening up that college fund. I'm telling you, we're about a third away through the season. Got a long way to go, guys. We're only getting started. Fantastic week, like I said. 49% on the season, moving up, like we said. But we're going to have our guest on the front end of the show here before we get into the previews and the Money Making Wednesday. But quick, as you know, we always get around the SEC. Real quick, the big news. Texas A&M starting quarterback, sophomore Connor Weigman, out for the season with a broken foot. They thought it would just be maybe day-to-day, as Jimbo said. Came out this morning officially from Billy Lucci, owns Tex Ags, out for the season. I think it's kind of like a stress fracture type deal where weight bearing is only going to make it worse. Add in Max Johnson. Everybody knows him. Max Johnson, the former LSU transfer, Brad Johnson's son, Super Bowl winning quarterback with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Mark Richt's nephew. He's played in some games. You really couldn't ask for a better backup quarterback, if I'm being completely honest with you. A more serviceable backup quarterback. Alabama would love to have him. Auburn would give a lot to have him. South Carolina, I think, as a backup would give a lot to have him. A lot of schools would give a lot. He's got a high floor. Some people call him a statue. He's got a little bit more wiggle than you think. We'll preview that. We'll talk more about him as we get into that LSU Ole Miss matchup coming up. But real quickly, before we get Carter on here, I wanted to share the screen with you real fast and just kind of talk about some other quarterbacks in the league. It got me thinking today. What other backup quarterbacks would be serviceable and there wouldn't be a big drop-off, wouldn't really necessarily miss a beat? Let's first, before we get Carter on here, let's talk about Alabama. We've kind of seen this. Jalen Milroe, obviously the starter. Tyler Buckner, Ty Simpson. Jalen Milroe has his own struggles. I don't think Tyler Buckner, Ty Simpson would really be much better, if I'm being honest. I don't think they are going to get the job done from a championship standpoint, from the Alabama standpoint. We've kind of seen that. Well, I guess in a way, we've been lucky to see the backup quarterbacks. Wouldn't be a good situation for Bama. I wouldn't put them in that category. Just off the top of my head, LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee would probably feel pretty good about their backup quarterbacks. Moving to Arkansas, if KJ Jefferson, let's hope he doesn't go down. But if he did, Jacoby Criswell, recruited him out of high school. I liked him. Transferred from North Carolina, from Arkansas originally, is adopted into his high school coach's family. Great kid. I think he has ability. I think it would maybe take a little bit to get going, But I think after a game or two, Criswell could run the offense for Danny Enos and Sam Pittman. I feel better about Arkansas's backup situation than I do Alabama's. I'll say that. Moving to Auburn, we've kind of seen that a little bit. Similar to Alabama, we've seen Auburn's backup quarterback situation. Obviously, they're rolling with Peyton Thorne. That could change. We know Robbie Ashford. Some people are calling for him to start. I personally don't think Robbie Ashford is the answer. Holden Gerner, maybe you go with the freshman, but your next two games are going to be tough to throw him into that fire. Now, some believe you just sink or swim. You get Georgia this week, LSU in 2 weeks. Maybe you let him go. Again, don't feel great about this backup quarterback situation, but you also don't feel great about the quarterback situation in general with them. LSU, we know this one, Garrett Nussmeier. I feel good about that. A little bit of a Brett Favre mentality, gunslinger. You're going to have more turnovers than Jaden Daniels. But again, LSU would miss Jaden Daniels, obviously, but I don't think it would be a massive drop to Garrett Nussmeier. So in the SEC West so far, I would say Arkansas with Jacoby Criswell and Garrett Nussmeier at LSU would probably be in the best situations right now. And that moves us to the next one. One of the teams I mentioned very quickly at the beginning of the show, I would say the Ole Miss Rebels, or as they have them here on our lads, the Mississippi Rebels. After Jackson Dart went down, I mean, Spencer Sanders. I mean, he started games at Oklahoma State. Some people are higher on Spencer Sanders than I am. But again, as a backup quarterback, Ole Miss would take Spencer Sanders. Absolutely, they would take Spencer Sanders. Without hesitation, they would take Spencer Sanders. Moving on to that one. After that, let's go to Mississippi State here. Mississippi State. Will Rogers, and then it's Mike Wright, the Vanderbilt transfer. They bring him in packages. I think from a throwing standpoint, Mississippi State would miss him a little bit. From an improvision standpoint, offensive line struggling to go make plays with his legs. Yeah, I mean, you put him right there with that Alabama quarterback situation. If he's playing full-time, not a terrible situation to be in. You see him already a little bit. He dabbles in it a little bit. But overall, though, I don't think it would be a bad backup quarterback if he had to play full-time. Full-time, though, Mississippi State would be interesting. But again, he's probably about in that Alabama range. I think Auburn's in the worst shape from that standpoint. And then finally, the Texas A&M Aggies, I mean, who we just talked about. I mean, if he were to go down, let's just say Max Johnson were to go down, I believe that would mean it's the kid from Marcel Reed, I think. Yeah, Marcel Reed, the true freshman from Nashville, Tennessee. That wouldn't be good. But again, the main point, Connor Weigman out for the season, broken foot. Max Johnson up to the plate next. Next man up from that standpoint. I don't really know if they're going to miss a beat. I mean, I think Weigman's got the higher ceiling overall, but also the floor, I think, is a little higher for Max Johnson. I really do. I think the floor is a little higher there for Max Johnson. Let's move to the SEC East here before we get Carter on the show. We'll roll through that. Starting in the SEC East, let's go with the Florida Gators. We're going alphabetical here. I mean, if Graham Mertz were to go down, you got Jack Miller, who was competing for the job in fall camp, the Ohio State transfer. I don't really know what to think about that one. Max Brown was talked about as well. We hadn't seen a lot of Jack Miller. I mean, Graham Mertz, one of the more productive quarterbacks in the league right now through 4 weeks. I mean, he's only averaging like 3.3 yards per attempt passing, so not a lot of stretching the field. But again, the backup quarterback, Jack Miller, I can't really say. I don't want to lie to you. I don't feel any really type of way about that. I mean, we'd have to really see that. Georgia, and if Carson Beck were to go down, Georgia would be fine. I think they could get something out of Brock Vandagriff or Gunnar Stockton. I feel like they'd be fine. But they've kind of stockpiled that room. I've heard great things about Brock Vandagriff, so I think Georgia would be fine there. Moving to the next team, let's go to the Kentucky Wildcats. Kaya Sharon, I'd have to go back. I remember him in high school. I'd have to go back and watch his film. I mean, there would be a big drop-off from Devin Leary. Let's just call a spade there. There would definitely be a big drop-off there. I'd have to go back and watch Keon Shera from that standpoint to really absolutely know from that end. Moving on. Let's go to the Missouri Tigers. Now, they've been back and forth a little bit with the quarterback battle. You got who? Jake Garcia, Sam Horn. But Brady Cook's playing really well. I think there would be a drop-off. Like, say 2 or 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have said that. Right now, after his play against Kansas State and him gutting it out with an injury against Memphis this past week, it'd be a loss. I mean, not saying Sam Horn got a baseball background. Everybody remembers Jake Garcia. I was in Miami. The Valdosta, California kid transferred to Valdosta. I think there would be a drop-off, though, but that's more of a compliment to Brady Cook as we stand right now. Let's go to the South Carolina Gamecocks. Backup quarterback. Right now, Luke Doty, not really what I want to do. It would be a massive drop from Spencer Rattler. That would be a rough one. That would be a rough one. But here we go. We got Carter on. Let's get him on the screen real fast. Carter, what's going on, baby?
Hey, what's going on, man? How's life going?
Oh, it's going well, man. You got your show tonight?
Yeah, did a few of them, man, and now getting ready for this weekend's games, man. Let me get this going.
Oh, yeah, we're rocking the backwards hat, man. But like I said, guys, I mentioned it earlier at the beginning of the show. Carter, the Power Bryant, joining us from the Power Hour LSU. Fantastic show on YouTube. I mean, you've chatted through DM a little bit, Carter, but again, I'll go watch your stuff week to week. I think you do a fantastic breakdown. You get it out quick, too, dude. It's not just some podunk put together. You know what you're talking about. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I think you do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
I asked you to come on the show. And again, I appreciate you joining us here right off the bat, brother.
Yeah, it was weird though, because I was I actually went to the game this weekend, and my wife and I got to meet Paul Skeens, the number one pick, and it was so weird. Like, met Paul, you wore my bands, and I have these little kids in our neighborhood that hang out, and I was like, hey, I met Paul Skeens this weekend, and the kid and my little buddy Eli, little 10-year-old kid. He said, I don't know who that is. And then I was like, oh, he knows who this is. I was like, he's dating Livy Dunn. He was like, he's dating Livy Dunn. Oh,
yeah,
my goodness.
Yeah, forget Paul Skeens. Livy Dunn, that hits home, man.
But yeah.
So you were there. That was going to be my first question with you. Because I heard you on Blake's show last night. I think it was last night or two night or Monday. Y'all were on.
Yeah,
Blake Ruffino, Are You Serious Sports. You mentioned you felt like the Tiger Stadium crowd kind of willed the team to a victory to some extent. You didn't exactly say that. I took that, so I didn't want to put words in your mouth.
No.
But tell me, what was the atmosphere like? We all know traditionally Tiger Stadium, rocking place, tough place to play. But tell me, what do you mean by the environment was kind of different? Was it more the LSU fans were kind of threatened, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was a close game. Obviously, LSU fans understand that Arkansas plays them really close every year. And, when it's nighttime in Death Valley and it's a close game, they bring it. And they did. It forced Arkansas to call a lot of timeouts. And you shouldn't call timeouts in the second half of a close game. So they did a really good job of being loud. And it forced Sam Pittman and KJ Jefferson to make some brutal timeout mistakes later in that game.
Absolutely. No, I mentioned that. I just wanted to bring that up. Been to Tiger Stadium a couple of times, but I was interested in you saying that. Now, I feel like a lot of LSU fans out there, myself included, I know you broke down the game. What are your thoughts on the Matt House defense right now as we're heading into week 5, LSU heading to Oxford this week? I know things have been stated. You go back and watch the game. You see it looks like, I don't know, it was struggling is not the right word, but just trying to experiment, figure out how to use their personnel groupings. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously they're not good. I mean, they're the worst yard per carry defense. And to me, Dave, I think the big thing is showing resistance. So it's not just yards per carry, it's yard before contact. So it's not that the guys are just missing a ton of tackles. They are doing that. It's just there's not much resistance at all, right? And that's the issue. You want to make sure that they at least work for it. And there were a lot of plays that KJ Jefferson made that were incredible. And I know you're just not getting to know me, but I think KJ is so special. I really do. I think he's better than what a lot of people give him credit for. So I knew going into it that I felt like Arkansas was going to cover. I felt like Arkansas was going to play really tough. But even outside of those KJ plays, there was just a lot of just things that were just way too easy. So, for me, Keon Coleman's going to catch a jump ball on you. That KJ Jefferson's going to make a play on you from time to time. It's all the other stuff that it's really concerning.
Carter, your thoughts? Do you like that Arkansas wide receiver group, or you think a little bit more was that LSU secondary letting them look a little better than they were?
Yeah, it's definitely the secondary. Arkansas's receivers are an interesting bunch. They're transfers from Texas A&M Commerce. I didn't know there was a Texas A&M Commerce before the season.
Yeah.
And the other top receivers from Hillsdale. Never heard of it.
Yeah.
I would think that was a show on the CW. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't like so the receivers aren't great by any stretch of the imagination, and they still made plays. Their tight end's really good, but outside of that, it's just been the secondary. And the thing is, this secondary, it's been known for months now that they had been having issues. So it's not really anything new for Brian Kelly or anyone that works with LSU football that the secondary could have, a tough go at it. But yeah, they're just not a good group.
So transitioning here to the schedule, we got back-to-back road games coming up for the Tigers. You got Ole Miss we talked about this weekend. Then they go play some fellow Tigers in Columbia, Missouri. Missouri, unless something crazy happens, should be 5-0 next week. We could have an undefeated conference opponents right here. What's your thoughts on LSU? Are you concerned with these next two road trips? I mean, in your honest opinion, you keep up with the team. You have a beat on the LSU field. What's kind of the vibe? Are fans a little concerned about these back-to-back road trips coming up?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, I just got done doing my LSU show. The fans are concerned about winning both of these games versus Ole Miss and Missouri. But my job is to make them concerned because I am personally concerned. This is a stat that we uncovered on Power Hour LSU and Power Hour SEC before this past year, how difficult it is to win back-to-back road games. It's really hard. And it's important to understand the philosophy. I know some of these players, I won't ever pretend to be a player or anything like that, but you meet them, you talk to them, and it goes back to when I lived next to some of them in the same apartment complex. I don't think people quite understand how jarring it is to get on a plane, get off that plane, and then run into a building that has 100,000 people in there who don't like you. Okay. It's really hard to do, especially when you consider how different college football is. You don't travel as much as you do all the other sports. So it's tough to go on a plane back-to-back weeks and win both true road games. You also don't play a lot of true road games. So it's very difficult to win both of them. There's only been two teams since 2019 that has won both of a back-to-back road game scenario. That was 2019 LSU and 2022 Georgia. That's it. Two of the best teams of all time. It's really hard to do it. So you've got to be really good to pull it off. Now, of course, Ole Miss and Missouri, they're not the strongest teams in the world, but they're not bad either. So, yeah, it's going to be tough, especially with the way the defense is playing. But the good thing is Jaden and Malik are playing really well, and it might not matter.
I'm glad you brought them up real fast because I was transitioning to our next question. But I was going to ask you, you're right here, too, from a back-to-back road trip standpoint, especially with this Ole Miss game being at night. You're not getting back till after midnight, like you said. And then you got to, that kickoff next week's 11 a.m.? They're college kids. It is what it is, 18 to 22-year-olds. They'll bounce back. But, again, in the middle of the season, you're right. I worked in college football for 9-10 years. At A&M, when I was with Jimbo, we'd leave on Thursday night. It'd almost be like, I felt like you were going to a bowl game on road trips, dude. You'd leave Thursday night after practice. You'd be there. Dude, I remember we would sit there. We played in Starkville, Mississippi. We played at State one year. Dude, It felt like a week, dude. We sat there all Friday, and the game was at night. You're right. Road trips, more so than the casual fan would believe. It takes a lot. You're napping on a plane and stuff. Yeah, it's a lot. But to my point before we get you out of here, again, Carter Bryant from LSU Power Hour joining us here. Does a fantastic job. Has a great feel for the LSU football program. Appreciate you joining us. I had a quick question for you. Last one, or two more before we get you out of here. Do you see defenses here in the near future when they're playing LSU? You see him start bracketing Malik Neighbors? What's your kind of concern with that? Because obviously Jaden Daniels, that's his go-to target. If he looks at him, it's not him, it's either Brian Thomas or he kind of takes off. What's your kind of feel? What's LSU's next move when teams start trying to bracket? Because at some point I think it's coming.
Yeah, so Arkansas tried some of that, and it did open other guys, and Jaden honestly missed them. There was a few instances where that happened. I think the hard part, Dave, is Brian Thomas Jr. is playing so well. And Mike Dimbrock, the offensive coordinator for LSU, called his best game at LSU, I think, versus Arkansas. And I had someone on the staff agree with me on that. that it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. How he sequenced, and it obviously worked in the game. It's each play, the sequence of how the plays are as important sometimes as the plays themselves. Mike did a really good job moving Malik around. And the difficult thing about, double teaming Malik Neighbors is his football IQ. Brian Kelly was talking about it earlier this week. He knows how to play every single position. And one thing that makes him really deadly is he is so good in the slot. He is so freaking good in the slot. I think that's actually his best position. And when you look at him, think of him more of just like an X, like just an outside receiver. So he's so good that it might not truly matter. And him and Jaden have such good chemistry that those two can, if those two are on and they're playing, it might not matter if your defense is great. And if Brian Thomas Jr. makes a play or two here or there, it might not matter. But I do agree with you. At some point, Mason Taylor, I think, had a really good game this past weekend. They're going to need Chris Hilton. They're going to need Aaron Anderson. They're going to need some of these other guys to step up and make big plays.
Two more questions. To one quick one. Your favorite LSU Ole Miss game? It's that week, Magnolia Bowl. Growing up, going back, I don't know how old you are, Carter, but just in your lifetime, what is your favorite Ole Miss LSU memory?
Well, I'm going to go with the one time I actually went to Oxford, and it was the Zach Mettenberger kneeling down with 5 minutes left to go in the game, which is
I do remember that.
Yeah, and my buddy on the team, Ron Brooks, had a pick six, and it was great being there to watch him get beat down, being in Oxford, all that stuff. It was great. I'll give you another one to go along with the back-to-back road game. Was 2019 LSU. That game was, I think, a very underrated Burrow game, and the defense for LSU played horrible. And
it was kind of the John Rice Plumlee party coming out, wasn't it?
Right. But that was what kind of actually led me down the back-to-back road game path. That was the week after the Alabama game. And then I started looking and seeing that teams really struggle on at least one side of the football on that back end. And that's, Dave Aranda had never had a bad game, like won that badly. And that led me to believe that playing those games back-to-back, especially how emotional that Alabama game was beforehand. So obviously that game was a very special one.
All right, Carter, before we get you out of here, tell us, what's your thoughts? What's the feel? How do you see this one shaking out this weekend in Oxford?
Yeah, people that are smarter than me that bet a lot, they actually really do like Ole Miss outright in this game.
I saw Josh Pate straight up picked Ole Miss to win. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously he knows a lot about college football, or at least I think he does. And there are a lot of people that I know that bet, one that actually lives in Vegas, that really likes Ole Miss to win this game outright this weekend. I think LSU has enough to get it done. I do. I think the way Jaden and Malik are playing, one thing was Jaden did not have a good first half this past week, but the way those two are playing, the way LSU's offensive line is playing, I think they'll have enough. And I think they'll be able to get it done in a shootout-ish kind of game.
Well, it's good to hear. And Carter, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for getting on again. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong here, Carter. Carter Bryant, LSU Power Hour. Your show is on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Sundays at 8:15 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. And if you're just a general college football fan, Power Hour SEC. So if you're not an LSU fan, I do shows on all the teams on Power Hour SEC.
I've seen your stuff through KJ Jefferson and Arkansas breakdowns and stuff from the games.
Yeah.
Well,
it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Arkansas far outnumbers everybody else. I did not expect that when I started the channel, but yeah, I do a lot of Texas A&M stuff. I find them fascinating this year, and I will give you one hot take at the end. The game in Baton Rouge will decide the SEC West between LSU and Texas A&M. Final week.
I said that going into the season. I agree. I 100% agree with you. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you. And also give Carter, in case if you're on social media, give him the follow at I had it right here, at Carter the Power on Twitter right there, or on X, whatever we call it these days. But Carter, again, appreciate you joining us, man. You have a fantastic evening.
All right, buddy. Cheers.
Later, bub. Perfect. Carter Bryant there, guys, does a fantastic job. Again, not only LSU, he said it. I've seen it. He's not kidding. He has videos against or with Texas A&M, Arkansas. Does a great job breaking down. He gets it out quick, dude. It's like Sunday night. This dude has a whole game broke down. I mean, woo, he's quick, man. He is quick. Let's see where Rusty is, and we'll move from there. Let's see. Perfect. But until Rusty gets on, let's go back to just talking a little backup quarterback in the SEC before we get Rusty on, talk a little preview. But like we left off before Carter got on, we're talking about how would South Carolina feel if they're bad, if Spencer Rattler went down. It wouldn't feel great. Let's be honest. Luke Doty kind of used him as a package guy, wildcat guy. I don't think he could be the signal caller to go really win a bunch of games at South Carolina. Again, that'd be bad news bears for the old Gamecocks if Spencer Rattler went down. And then we have the Tennessee Vols, who are very interesting here. Very interesting here. If Joe Milton were to go down, or heck, who knows? They play bad enough. They play bad enough this week. He looks bad. He's a reason they're losing. I'm saying if he's a reason they're losing. I'm saying I actually think he gets a lot more flack than he really deserves. But let's just say he goes down. Something happens. Let's hope not. True freshman, 5-star everything. Nico Amalavea, freak show. Unbelievable arm talent here, dude. I saw him on a video. His ability to throw to the other hash is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. He's going to be the next guy for Tennessee. Would he be ready now? I don't know. I don't think that offense is as big as a transition for a freshman as some other offenses would be. So I think he may be a plug-and-play guy. Yes, it would obviously be a learning curve. He's a true freshman. But I don't think it would be some massive learning curve. So, again, Joe Milton, if he went down, it would be a loss, but I don't think it'd be some massive loss. Let's write that one down. And then finally, Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt Commodores, baby. Let's see. They went down, I believe it's A.J. Swan. Right there. I believe, yeah. Ken Seals, who feels like he's been around Texas forever, recruiting him at Texas A&M from Weatherford, Texas. He didn't have the upside A.J. Swan does. But, again, I've said A.J. Swan has as much upside since maybe Jay Cutler, depending where you kind of figure in Kyle Shermer, who was a fine quarterback at Vanderbilt. But Ken Seals, I think he's a winnable plus guy. But on cue, we're done with Vanderbilt. My guy hopping on right now, Rusty Mansell. What's up, baby?
Let's stay on Vandy and see what Barton's got going on.
let's stay on Vandy. I like the hat, brother.
Yeah, man. Company, I got to find out. A company sent this to me. It's a really cool hat. It's waterproof, so I have worn it to the beach, the pool, everywhere all summer. I need to get second person's asked about my hat. So if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a nice hat. I like it. Got a little bucket,
Rusty, appreciate you joining us, man. And everybody listening, like I told you coming in, Rusty Mansell, owner, does everything with a couple other guys over at DawgsHQ for On3 Sports. Fantastic job. As most people know, if you're a Georgia fan, you know who Rusty Mansell is. Knows everything about Georgia. I appreciate him taking the time, getting on. Yeah, Rusty, I wanted to, before we get into Georgia, I was thinking about this the other day because I saw you on social media. What is you go to some high school games, obviously, a little bit on Saturday. What is a Saturday in the fall like for you? You're at these games Thursday, Friday. What do you do? Give us the play-by-play itinerary of a Rusty Saturday.
Well, a Saturday now, it's different this year because the first time as a co-owner of DawgsHQ, I'm a publisher on the On3 network. So it's been a little different for me. I have guys that work for me now, and Jake Rose, a business partner with me, so he's our lead writer. And I have kind of stepped back a little bit on my Saturday role as far as I'm able to watch multiple games and not just go to a Georgia game. Now, Friday nights is I have a contract with Peachtree TV out of Atlanta, so I do the Friday night game of the week, and that's been so much fun. This week, you know this area, we got Lee County at Houston County, so excited about that game.
That's Friday.
Friday night, yeah. So Thursday, I do been blessed. I do a deal with Fox 5 Atlanta with DJ Shockley and those guys. So they are now the official Georgia TV station. So they do several shows, and I go down on Thursday nights and film a segment with them. So Wednesday morning, I do radios in Atlanta, and that's been super fun. 929 The Game, do a steakhouse there. And it's just been, Dave, all the stuff I've done in my life, I kind of was not sure if I had time to do this. And I said, you know what, let's just see where this thing goes. But man, I'm telling you, it has been just crazy how many people listen to that particular station because it's the biggest station in Atlanta, and it's just been fun, man. Kind of like two guys just chopping it up. I mean, you've done it on the phone many a days.
Yeah.
You just, you know what I mean? It's just people in there talking sports and talking music and hanging out and pop culture, and that's really fun, man. It's really a cool deal.
And that's always what I appreciate about you. You talked about us chopping up. You're always willing to answer the phone, answer any questions. You've been a great soundboard for a lot of people in recruiting. You know the lay of the land in the Southeast like no other. And that leads me to my next question. What is kind of the change you would see? Obviously, there's a lot, but I feel like the people who don't really follow recruiting 365, 24/7, what has been the biggest change since you really started in the biz in recruiting to now?
Well, we've had a seismic shift in the past probably 2 cycles, and obviously NIL is very much involved with this. And you know, it used to be, and the best part of my job is still relationships. I still like talking to the parents and still, you know, watching those kids and talking to those people. I still, because he lives 10 minutes from me, I still talk to Trevor Lawrence's dad once a week. I mean, we've been talking for 10 years now, and you know, he's a good friend of mine, and we talk about everything. So the relationship part is very key to me. Now, I don't care really at this point, like how connected you are and those types of things, and follow recruiting and those things. Dave, these June official visits, you know, it changes everything, because now on those Sunday conversations, when you sit down with that head coach, you kind of know where this thing's going. Those 4 weekends in June now have replaced, you know, the people that's followed it a long time. It used to be December and January, those OVs. Now the big decisions, and here's the thing too, Dave, these kids have been recruited 3 or 4 years now. You know, it's not like you're recruiting 1 or 2 cycles. We could spend 2 hours, and you know this more than anybody, on the wear and tear of being a college football coach and support staff. It's insane. Now you're having to recruit these kids 3 and 4 years to even get down to that final OV. So I think the biggest change for me has been June official visits, and then NIL involved, because it certainly is a game changer. You kind of find out, you know, where these kids are going to go. And, you know, I know a million kids that were leaning one way in May and felt like they were going to end up at the end of June. They didn't end up at those schools, certainly because of, you know, NIL is a big deal.
Oh, no, absolutely. I can attest. Like you said, that June in 2021 where it came open again right after COVID, it doesn't go fit in a whole recruiting calendar into one season right there. But transition to Georgia, obviously, team you have a great feel for, you know, Kirby Smart. What is, in your opinion, what makes Kirby Smart just different? And also kind of 2 questions in one here. What makes him different? And when do you think was kind of the turning point to what we know what Georgia is today from at the beginning of his tenure back starting in 2016?
Well, just Kirby is wired different, man. And I don't know Nick Saban personally. I know a lot of people that do know Nick Saban personally, and these guys just have a switch, man, and it's rarely off. I mean, that's who they're wired to be. These guys don't cook on green eggs, and they don't go fishing. You know, like their deal is football and coaching football and recruiting, and they love that part of it. And they're just, alpha competitive people that are able to do this. Now, as you look back at Kirby, I think 2 things kind of changed the path of Georgia. And one thing in particular doesn't get enough mentions. Georgia goes 8-5, and everybody, I think, knew that Kirby Smart could recruit. I don't think schools negative recruited him that way, but they did negative recruit him after going 8-5, saying, "Hey, look, they lost to Georgia Tech, man. They lost to Tennessee on a Hail Mary. I mean, that he can't do it. He can't win on Saturdays. They got rid of Rick, who's winning 10 games, great guy. Now Kirby can only win 8. And I think the biggest thing that helped Kirby Smart was one Sunday conversation between Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Lorenzo Carter, Davin Bellamy, and Roquan Smith, because he got those 5 guys to come back. And when those 5 guys came back, they went to the national championship game, and you had the Rose Bowl win and all that. So the negative recruiting at that part against him was over with. You know what I mean? So I think that was a huge deal. I think the second deal was finally beating Alabama, in 2021. That was he had to get that off of his back, because if he didn't, that was the next thing that's going to be used against him is, hey, they're just a big game team. They're not ever going to win it. You're not going to win that championship. They can't beat Alabama. They can't beat Saban. So I think that beating Alabama in 21 in that game, those two things kind of
really helped.
Yeah, it really helped. It really got the program to where Kirby can walk in anywhere and kind of have that respect, and he has it on his resume. And then you go back to back, which I don't know a lot of people were kind of expecting that, but now he's been back to back and he's had all these NFL players. I mean, he's kind of at the top of the mountain right now.
We have a question in the fan chat for you, Rusty, real fast.
Okay.
A fan says Kirby's demeanor, what has changed? I think they're talking about this year, saying he looks a little different. This is through text. Any thoughts on that? They wanted me to ask you that.
He's a little heavier. I can tell you that. Looks a little heavier. From talking to people in the program, I think one thing has kind of evolved around Kirby, and that is he understands the scope and pressure on these assistant coaches. And I think now Sunday nights they have family night, and I think on Wednesday nights during the season, as soon as practice is over, he sends these guys home, and go home and see your kids and those types of things. So, his demeanor, obviously it changes with the amount of experience, he has, but I can tell you this from knowing 3 or 4, SEC coaches really good, that the amount of what those guys go through, I don't know how it's worth it. You know what I mean? It's never, nobody is ever texting those guys saying, hey, Rusty Mansell had a hell of a week in class. It's never good news. It's bombs all day long, every day, and at some point you just have, I was not talking to Kirby, but I was talking to another head coach at one time about that. And he said, look, man, there's times at night I'll take my phone and I have to just put it down because it does not matter. It won't stop. I can only address it the next day. So, and you're talking about, Dave, you're talking about the off season. So there's a lot on these guys, a lot of stress. They're wired to do this. Now, do I think there's going to be a Bobby Bowden again? There will not. I don't think there will be. What Nick Saban has done, for how long he's done it is incredible. But what these guys go through now, and every single day, you're recruiting your roster, man. I just don't know how these guys are going to do longevity.
Yeah, you're right. Retention of your roster, recruiting it here for the future of your roster. You're right. It's nonstop. Even when you're on the break into June and July.
Yeah.
Kids are texting you. People want graphics. Things change. Setting up visits. No, you're 100% right. But Rusty, 2 more questions. We'll get you out of here again. Rusty Mansell joining us over here. Appreciate him taking the time talking about Georgia. Rusty, we're heading to the Plains this weekend. Georgia heading to the Plains this weekend. Georgia coming in undefeated. Auburn coming in a little battered up. Hugh Freeze not really sparking much confidence with many people in the press conference. Almost like, why do they show up here for the next 3 weeks? But just give me your general thoughts heading in this one. The line was a little smaller than I thought when it came out on Sunday. 14
a little weird. Well, it started initially at 16.5, and then it got down to 14. I thought, man, is somebody not playing? And I couldn't really figure it out. And it's one of those deals, man. And listen, I'm a believer in Hugh Freeze on the football field, his product and what he can do, especially offensively and stress you. But right now, he doesn't have the pieces to the puzzle. He doesn't have a quarterback. And I think, Dave, Georgia's lost 3 games since 2020, and there's been a common denominator in every game, and that's been a big quarterback play, elite quarterback play. So you look at Mac Jones, you look at Tua, and then you look at Kyle Trask in that game. Kyle Trask threw for 484, and Kyle Pitts shred him. So when you look at that formula, if Georgia doesn't give them some cheap turnovers, a special teams turnover, a couple of short fields, I think it's just going to be an uphill challenge. And it might be, 27-10, 24-10, something like that. But here's the thing too, man. Right or wrong, and Kirby certainly knows this, and he's earned the right to do this. But if Kirby gets up on you, like the Tennessee game last year, he'll suffocate you. I mean, he will absolutely try to run that clock out. He doesn't care about trying to win 41-7. If he can get up on you and he realizes you cannot score, he'll suffocate you to death. So, Georgia could win a game, 24-6 and not dominate it, not look so bad on the final score, but absolutely dominate the game, because he will absolutely suffocate a clock if he gets a good lead on you.
No, you're right. He's not into the stylistic points.
No.
They're not, like you said. I'm with you. Why that line could be low. They go in there and get a 14-7-point lead and just kind of sit on it.
Correct.
It's like, hey, as long as we don't turn the ball over, they're not going to go score on us, guys.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. Rusty, last question. We'll get you out of here. if I was to tell you Georgia did not three-peat, did not win the national championship this year, if you had to guess right now on September 27th, what would that reason be? Why would they not three-peat?
I think somebody's going to have to outscore them, and I think that's kind of the way I think you could beat Georgia. And you start thinking who can do it. Okay, so USC kind of fits the narrative. Now, defensively, they don't. Mm-hmm. I personally think Texas can play bully ball. I think they got elite wide receivers. Their quarterback's playing well. They're good up front. They got a running game. They kind of they kind of check the boxes of what Georgia has had problems with. You look at Michigan and teams like that. I don't know that Michigan's going to bully ball Georgia. Maybe they do. So you look at teams like that. Ohio State right now, I'm not sure is as good as they were last year. I don't think Georgia's quite as good as they were last year. I don't quite see a super team. The potential I do see, I think if you start looking down the line, is Texas. Now, what would be the kind of the negative there? Sark hadn't been there with this group. You know what I mean? So you don't know how that thing's going to play out either. The one unknown, Dave, you probably watch a lot more than me, is Washington. Everybody tells me that Washington offensively is legit. And I don't know about defensively. So, in Alabama, I don't quite want to tuck them away just yet because I think they can figure out some things. And this is a year that, you can play really good defense, throw a couple of deep balls, and if they're able to run the football, you can win some games. So they looked a lot better on the offensive line, which was puzzling to me to start the year. I feel like they got some really good players there. I was talking to former player Mike Johnson this morning in the station. He said, look, Rusty, they played a lot of duo, but did a lot of better things this week, so they might figure it out too. But if I say Georgia is not going to three-peat, I think someone like Texas, just too much firepower for Georgia, and they're not able to outscore, like Georgia outscored Ohio State. They didn't stop them. They just outscored them. You know what I mean? Ohio State missed one at the end. So games like that, Alabama, they had to outscore Alabama, and if somebody beats Georgia, I think they're just going to outscore them.
And I think you bring up a good point before we get you out of the Texas one. The defensive line's improved tremendously.
Yes.
I mean, I would say right now in the country, from what I've seen, the two best defensive lines are Georgia and Texas. And I think, like you said, Texas could give Georgia some problems offensively. Again, that would be a long time away. But you're right. Would the lights be too big for a team that's never been there? And Georgia's whole roster has at least been there, played in big games like that.
Played in those big games. They played in big games. And listen, Kamari last year's the guy that everybody kind of knows is a stronghold over there. So you look at those games and, with Worthy and A.D. Mitchell, what would the other corners be able to do in a lineup like that? So it's been the recipe to beat Georgia. Multiple elite receivers, really good quarterback play. That's what's giving Georgia problems. Going back, you can go back to Joe Burrow. I mean, that team right there, that you look at the team they had in 2019, 2020, it was still Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Trayvon Walker. They were all pups, but the formula was there, and you had to have elite wide receivers and you had to have elite quarterback play. Right now, Texas, to me, potentially looks like they would have that recipe.
Absolutely. Well, Rusty, I appreciate you. I know you're busy as hell. You gave us the rundown of the schedule. I appreciate you joining us, man, to come on and talk a little Georgia for a bit. Me and you'll keep in touch. I'll give you a call.
Yeah, have me on. Yep, have me on anytime, man. Thanks, Dave.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Again, everybody, Rusty Mansell over from DawgsHQ on Georgia's On3 website. But if you want something to know about Georgia, he's not going to toot his own horn. I will. No, you could pick up the call. He could pick up the phone right now, call Kirby Smart, and could get probably whatever he wanted. Obviously, besides the stuff Kirby wouldn't share with everyone. But again, Rusty Mansell does a fantastic job. Carter Bryant does a fantastic job. Thought those would be good guests coming on between LSU's big matchup with Ole Miss this week. They have another big road game next week. You heard Carter. Since 2019, only 2019 LSU and 2022 Georgia have won back-to-back road games. Now, sometimes those aren't set up in the schedule as much, but again, it's impressive. I mean, it's going to be tough. That is going to be tough for LSU coming in. And then Georgia, first road trip of the season. We'll get into that preview. We're getting into the previews right now. Georgia's first road trip of the season, though. Appreciate Rusty coming on. We'll have those guys on again. But it's time, guys. It's time for a little preview. Let's kick it off. Florida at Kentucky, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ESPN. Kentucky currently favored by 1.5. Setting the tone for you on this one, though. Massive game for both teams. Kentucky's won 2 in a row in this series. I think that's forgotten about. That's forgotten. I bet Billy Napier's hammered that home to his squad this week. Florida left for dead 4 weeks ago in Salt Lake City. Nobody was wanting to bring them back to Gainesville. They were left for dead. In my opinion, they're 1-0 in must-win games so far this year, though. They had the Tennessee came to town 2 weeks later. Florida's program, Billy Napier, Graham Mertz, the fan base's backs were against the wall. Tennessee came into their house, came into the crib, and Florida flexed its muscles. They flexed their muscles back and said, no, we're staying in this SEC East race right off the bat. We're starting off 1-0. This is another one, but it's on the road. You're not going to have the home crowd behind you for this one. Again, Florida 1-0 in must-win games. I think this is another one. Transition to Kentucky. Cats come in 4-0, but they haven't really been truly tested. You go watch the film. There's been some highs and lows, but overall there's been a lot of inconsistencies on offense. And that was Kentucky's problem last year, the big blue wall. They brought in transfer quarterback Devin Leary. He's been okay, but it's always something with their offense so far. It's either Devin Leary can't get them into the right protections, false starts, procedural issues, receivers dropping the ball, turnovers. Kentucky wants to be in the East race come November. They need to split these next two, and their next game next week's at Georgia. So I don't know if they need this one. Both teams need this one. One team is going to be feeling really good about themselves, and the other, it's going to be a long road ahead. As you know how we do it, where this game will be won. It's going to be Kentucky's front seven versus Florida's offensive line. Florida has to be able to run the football to win this game. For Kentucky, no one has rushed over 100 yards on the Cats so far. But again, remember the schedule I just read you. Not overly been challenged. But I do like their guys on the outside. J.J. Weaver and Octavius Oxendine have been really good for Mark Stoops and defensive coordinator Brad White. They've not, like I said, not been challenged. Those aren't potent offenses in Akron, Eastern Kentucky, Ball State, and Vandy. For Florida, running back Trevor Etienne, I think he's going to have a big day on the edges, though. That's where it's going to be key because I could see Florida getting a little bundled up on the interior, running between the tackles. And that's Montrell Johnson. He's an inside runner. But if Kentucky's not allowing you inside, you got to do something different. Billy Napier's smart. He knows that. This could be a big day for Trevor Etienne. If you're a guy that's putting on a player prop bet or a woman putting on a player prop bet, you may want to take Trevor Etienne this week. But the key, Florida, it needs to get Graham Mertz into manageable situations. Here's a stat for you. Mertz is 1-9 in his career games going back to Wisconsin. Remember, he transferred to Florida from Wisconsin in games that he threw the ball 30 times or more. 1-9 in games he threw the ball 30 times or more. It's not good. So obviously that shows you, and I think his average yard per attempt is like 3.2. So like he's throwing it from me to my procedural light over here. It's not good. Like you got to keep him in manageable second and third situations. You got to win first down with him. If Florida can establish a run game, this game's real simple. They'll win this game. If not, they're probably not going to leave Kroger Field in Lexington with a win. It's that simple. Let's get into prediction, baby. Prediction. I like both lines of scrimmages for both these teams in this one, if I'm being honest. Florida gets back Micah Muscuza, who was suspended from the end of the fight against Tennessee for the Charlotte game, but he's back. Billy Napier said Kingsley Iguacan, their other offensive lineman, TBD, he may be played. So they may get two offensive linemen back, one at least. I think Florida's run game is going to be good enough to get Graham Mertz into favorable second and third down situations. Another thing to keep an eye on, just telling you, I expect Kentucky to come out early, maybe take a page out of Utah's book, first, second play action, and try to hit some explosive plays over the top to Dane Key or Barry and Brown. Remember, first play for offense for Utah, they came out there and hit a shot off their first playoff play action for a touchdown, 7-0 right off the bat. Mark Stoops, as much as it pains him, knows that his team, if he can, because he wants to play ball possession too, they can get up 10-14, 10-0, 14-0 right off the bat and make Florida play catch up, and they're playing from behind the whole time. That plays right into Kentucky's hands. Then add in Florida's new defensive coordinator, Austin Armstrong, very aggressive. Statistically right now, Florida's the number one defense in the SEC. As of this moment, going into week 5, they're the number one defense in the SEC. There will be opportunities for Kentucky to take advantage of because he likes to bring the house, bring some pressure, disguise some blitzes. He's willing to put his corners and his DBs in one-on-one situations against a solid Kentucky receiver group in Barry and Brown and Dane Key. Probably the best they've had in a while, but they've had some drop issues early. It's got to get figured out. I was really impressed, though, with the Florida defensive plan versus Tennessee. I expect to see an efficient offensive game plan when I think of Florida's offense going into this game. Just not great, efficient is the word to keep in mind when you're thinking of the Florida offense, Graham Mertz. I think it's going to be good enough to survive a trip to Kroger Field in Lexington, Kentucky. I think they board their plane heading back to the Sunshine State. Gators 4-1, 2-0 in conference. Shouldn't be looking too far ahead, but is there a chance you see an undefeated showdown in the world's largest cocktail party in Jacksonville? I know it's not called that anymore, but I still call it that. Georgia, Florida here in a couple of weeks. Could Florida be Georgia's biggest competition in the East? We'll find out, but I think the Gators get a 24-20 win in Lexington on Saturday morning, afternoon, brunch, whatever you want to call it on that one. Moving to the next one. Woo! This is one I've been a part of twice. It's always down to the wire. Texas A&M versus Arkansas in Arlington at Jerry's World, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone, SEC Network. A&M currently favored by 6.5, setting the tone. We discussed it at the beginning of the show. A&M starting quarterback, sophomore Connor Weigman, out for the season, handing the reins over to Max Johnson, former LSU transfer. Really, after Weigman went out at the end of the second half, Texas A&M offense really started clicking, started going. I mean, I'm telling you, Max Johnson's got a higher floor. His worst is better than Connor Weigman's worst. Weigman's got a higher ceiling, more of a gunslinger, going to take more chances. Max Johnson's going to go through his progressions. Brother, he's a coach's kid. Brad Johnson, Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Tampa Bay Bucks. His uncle, Mark Richt, we know that if you follow the SEC, was at Georgia for 15, 16 years. It's in his blood. He understands that. Real cerebral kid. But we have 6 SEC West teams going at it this week, and I can't think of a matchup that defines the 2023 SEC Western Division better than this matchup right here. Who are both these teams? I think everybody's asking that. I mean, is this the A&M versus Miami? Is this the Arkansas versus BYU? Or is this the Arkansas team that went into Tiger Stadium and probably should have won last week if they had better red zone success? What teams are these? Is this the game A&M comes out and kind of sets the tone, puts people on notice? I mean, they got Alabama coming to town next week. Do they come out and look really well, just kind of like people expected them to do against Miami, and it just didn't happen? I mean, to be fair, they came out hot. They were 10-0 right off the bat. It just kind of fell apart. Is this the game A&M puts it all together? They haven't had a complete game yet. Does this Arkansas squad I just mentioned, do they build some momentum off last week's performance? 2 emotional rival games here, though, back-to-back for Arkansas. Schedule's usually not like that. Arkansas usually plays LSU last game of the regular season in November. It's usually some freezing cold game. But they played our LSU first game of the conference regular season schedule, and then they go to Arkansas. These are 2 of their biggest rivalry games back-to-back. I don't care what people tell you. Arkansas takes the LSU game more serious than LSU does. Just is what it is. They also take this game a lot more serious than Texas A&M does. The Southwest Classic. This is a trophy game, guys. This game is normally down to the wire. Momentum-changing plays throughout the entire game, you name it. I mean, everybody remembers the Damani Richardson play last year. I mean, KJ Jefferson on the goal line extends. They knock it out. They're running it. I forget who. Maybe Andre White hands it back. Or maybe Tyreek Chappelle, one of the corners, hands it back to Damani Richardson, and he runs it back for a touchdown. Kind of like that Ed Reed play back when he was at Miami and Boston College. Crazy play. Stuff happened. Crazy things happen in this game. I was a part of this one twice. In 2017 and 2018 in Jimbo Fisher's first year. One was an overtime win. I think it was Armani Watts' interception in the end zone to end it in overtime. And then next season, 2018, Jimbo's first year, we ran the opening kickoff back, and we had to get a stop at the end on defense to win it. Arkansas was going to drive to win the game. I think that was Chad Morris's first year at Arkansas. But Arkansas, Texas A&M, here's some more stats for you. The last 10 years of this game, 6 games decided by a touchdown or less, with 3 of them going into overtime. But transitioning to just this year's game, this is a loser-leave town game, in my opinion. The winner moves on to play another day. I mean, Arkansas's got a game in Oxford the next week. A&M's got Alabama coming to town. The loser, however, will not feel great about their chances in competing in the SEC West. Is the most wide open. I remember the SEC West being since 2014. It probably is more so this year. And we aren't even at the end of September, or we're not even to the end of September yet. We're almost there. Or I should say we're not even to October yet. It's the best way to say that. But already, non-conference losses for both teams. Arkansas's already got a conference loss under their belt. Both teams need it. Neither team can afford a loss here, just from a record standpoint and a psyche schedule standpoint, because there's still a lot of season left. Then you throw in the Bobby Petrino, the Bobby P storyline, facing his former team. He's not a big fan of Arkansas. You know this one's personal. Fantastic storyline. But let's stick to just this game specifically on the field, where this game will be won. I think to be real specific here, how does the A&M offensive line pass protect Max Johnson in his first start this year? Arkansas defensive coordinator, who I worked with at UCF, it's his first year at Arkansas, Travis Williams. very aggressive play caller. They struggled the last 2 weeks, and it's probably why they've lost, because their defense, not their offense. Now the offense struggled a little bit in red zone, but man, from that last drive on in the first half for LSU, throughout the entire second half, LSU did what they wanted. Really, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas Jr. did whatever they wanted. But A&M knows he's playing a guy who's some people may call him a statue, Max Johnson. I don't think he is. Has a little bit more wiggle, pocket awareness than people give him credit for. Remember, he's a coach's kid. His dad's Super Bowl winning quarterback. He knows how to play the game. However, I think Arkansas brings pressure off the left side. Remember, Max Johnson's left-handed. So they're coming in his face. They're coming off the left side. I think if they're smart, if Travis T. Will, and he is a smart guy, they'll bring him off the left side to force Max Johnson to slide to his right and throw across his body. I think that's what you're going to have to do. A&M has the matchup advantages with their skill guys versus Arkansas secondary. But if they are second and long situations and do not win on first down, the offense could stall out. And it doesn't matter what Evan Stewart, Anaya Smith, if Noah Thomas plays, what happens there, or Moose Muhammad as well. A&M's got the skill position advantage, but it doesn't matter if they're in Max Johnson's face. He's having to move to his right a lot. So you may have to bring an extra tight end to help block on that left side, because they're going to try to make him move to his right and throw across his body. At least that's what I would do. I know Travis Williams is aggressive, and he's probably watching film and seeing the same thing. However, though, with that one, I do think if the Aggies can protect him, his floor, like I said, is higher than Connor Weigman's. Kind of like him in these little emotional games. Will be interesting. Let's get to prediction time, though. I think it's going to be another fantastic Southwest Classic. I think it's going to be close, but I'm just going to say it. It would not shock me if A&M comes out of the gate and plays their best game so far and just kind of goes and runs and hides, controls it from the get-go. Arkansas had a late emotional matchup against LSU last week. That's usually not before this game. And didn't get back home due to travel situations. I think with the weather, they didn't leave Baton Rouge. They didn't get home to Fayetteville till 7:30 a.m., 8 in the morning last week. And this is an early morning kickoff at 11 a.m. They're college kids. They're resilient, 18 to 22 years. They'll be fine. But like me and Carter Bryant were talking about, that adds up after a while. I mean, Arkansas, they're going to be on the road for 4 straight weeks. They got LSU last week, Arlington this week, Oxford next week, then go to Tuscaloosa the next 4 straight weeks without being at home. But back to the game. Can Arkansas's offensive line get enough push against a very talented A&M defensive front to give KJ Jefferson and the wide receivers enough time to pick up where they left off last week? Because they played really well last week. Also, something to keep an eye on from a defensive standpoint if you're A&M. This has been a pretty undisciplined group since DJ Durkin has been at A&M. This is his second season as the DC. Can the A&M defense be disciplined enough to not forget about the delay releases from the Arkansas tight ends? And specifically, if you watched the LSU game last week for Arkansas, Luke Haas, freshman of the week in the SEC, had a big night in Baton Rouge last week. A&M's got to watch him. A team that struggles to tackle out in the flats. That's where Miami picked up a bunch of their yards and took advantage of the Aggies. They better be watching out. They better keep an eye on that. I mean, I'm sure they are, but it's easier to say that Monday through Thursday than it actually is on Saturday. Got to be locked in. I think the Aggies have their best defensive performance of the season. I think the offense comes out firing out of the gate. I'm thinking more for A&M, more of a passing to set up the run type game plan by Bobby Petrino here in Jimbo Fisher some. Give me the Ags coming out hot. Arkansas coming back a little bit. Ags in a close one. But again, do not be shocked if they take control early, win this one going away and running hot. Give me the Ags. Give me Texas A&M 31-24. Moving on to the next one. LSU at Ole Miss. 5 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ESPN. LSU -2.5 right now, setting the tone for you. Things have changed since week 1 as well with this one. I mean, a lot of people are down on LSU a little bit, myself included. I still think they have some questions on the back end, but this is the first road trip of 2 coming up for LSU. We talked about it with Carter. At Mizzou next week, but first, the trip to Oxford, and this is Brian Kelly's first trip to Oxford, a place LSU has struggled some in the past. But for Ole Miss, this is a must-win situation for Ole Miss. Look, Lane Kiffin is not going anywhere. Locked in after this. He's locked in this after the last year's contract extension. People can say what they want. He's not going anywhere. But the honeymoon stage is over, and the more you keep losing big games, and the more big money people are ultimately going to stop ponying up to the Grove Collective. Ole Miss is an IL collective. I think the honeymoon stage for Ole Miss was a little bit over when he started flirting with Auburn a little bit. But again, Lane Kiffin, I think Tyler Siskey said it on his show on Disrupt Media. What is it? If he loses this week, he's one. If Alabama ends up winning 9 or more games this year, he would be 1-20 in his career at Ole Miss, I forget exactly, against teams with 9 or more wins. He's beating the teams he should, but losing to the teams he shouldn't be losing to. But this game specifically, the Lane Kiffin MO is off this year. His trademark. His offense starts and ends with the run game. People forget about that. People think he wants to sling around. No, he wants to run the football. Go look up last year. Then you add in their best skill guys have been beat up. Trey Harris, wide receiver, Zachary Franklin, the UTSA transfer. Then right through, I thought was the best tight end portal addition from Memphis, Caden Prieskorn. Played a little bit, had the first catch against Alabama up the middle last week, but he's been banged up. Do they come back a little healthier? Probably. Is this the week they can get anything going on the ground against an LSU team that is struggling to put their personnel in the best position to succeed on offense? An opportunity for both the Ole Miss offense and the LSU defense to get right. It really is. This is the best offense that Pete Golden and the Rebel defense will probably play from top to bottom this year. And I thought Ole Miss played solid last week against Alabama. Ole Miss is better on defense for sure. The personnel is not always there, but they're better. Does Pete Golden become the first DC? Carter mentioned it. Arkansas and Travis Williams bracketed Malik Neighbors a little bit, but full time, is Pete Golden the first DC to do that this week against LSU? Do they bracket Malik Neighbors, take him away, and make Jaden Daniels beat them with someone else, saying, hey, Malik Neighbors is not beating us? And then also something to think about before where this game will be won. How does Ole Miss use their own number 4? Remember, Harold Perkins, LSU's sophomore start. He's number 4, do everything. Very similar to Ole Miss's true freshman number 4. Centurion Perkins, is he a spy for Jaden Daniels? He was spying Jalen Milroe last week. I think Pete Golden goes with that same similar game plan for this week. But where this game will be won, we just teased it. The Ole Miss run game versus the LSU defensive front. And I say this all the time. Ole Miss has to earn the right to throw the football against the LSU secondary. They can, but they have to earn the right by establishing a run game. That starts with running the football against a stout LSU front, at least from a personnel standpoint. If Ole Miss can get the run game going, look out. They could put up some points on LSU. Now, that's easier said than done. We all know that. But Ole Miss's offensive line, this is what concerns me. 27 tackles for losses in 4 games, and 10 of those 27 being sacks. That's awful. That's terrible. So 4 guys back. I know they changed offensive line coaches. And John Garrison here now. Thornton went to Auburn. But is it that big of a difference? I'm kind of asking. But another stat, Ole Miss has had 19 red zone attempts so far this year in 4 games. Only 11 of those trips have turned into touchdowns. It's not good. It's not good at all. Prediction, to piggyback where I just left off when I said where it would be won. LSU's third down defense is not good right now. It's 99th in the country in third down conversion rate. Not good. Now, with that being said, if this Ole Miss offensive line is in third and long situations, I expect Harold Perkins to have a field day versus right tackle Micah Pettis. Once they probably make him – I don't even know if I'd spy Jackson Dart if I'm them. I'm bringing Harold Perkins because there's such a mismatch against the right tackle Micah Pettis. If I am Matt House, I'm lining up Harold Perkins on Micah Pettis. He may win it. He's going to win it at least 7 to 8 times, if not every time. I just do not see Ole Miss getting the run game going enough to win this football game. I do think Ole Miss is going to have their fair share of explosive plays, though. Just a weird line. It's had me weird all week. It started off, I think, at 3. It's down to 2.5 now. Vegas thinks this game's going to be close. They think this game's going to be close. I don't know what to tell you on that. I think it will be back and forth for a while through 3 quarters. But I think LSU wins the 4th quarter, pulls away with a win that is a lot closer than the final score indicates. Give me the LSU Tigers 37-28. Moving on to the next one. We talked about it with Rusty here. Georgia at Auburn, 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on CBS. Georgia 14.5-point favorite right now. Me and Rusty talked about it a little bit lower than we thought. Maybe Georgia's first road game. Auburn can only play better on offense, but setting the tone. 2 teams heading in 2 different directions. Georgia obviously has championship aspirations to three-peat, and they're really trying to get healthy. That's probably their biggest issue right now on their red zone offense. But Auburn just trying to put a respectable product out on the field in Hugh Freeze's first season. That's all they're trying to do. Defensively, Auburn's been fine, though. Ranks 5th in the SEC. It's early. 22nd nationally. Again, it's early. But for some reason, if I'm an Auburn fan, I feel some type of way with Hugh Freeze. And maybe this is just me, but he's painted such a faint picture starting last week. Talking about, well, we've only been here for a year, A&M, LSU, and Georgia all have been there for a while. Well, no kidding, dude. You knew that when you took over the job. Jimbo Fisher's going into his 6th year. Kirby Smart going into what? Since 2016, his 8th year here at Georgia. I mean, Brian Kelly going into his 2nd year. Come on, man. I know you're trying to set realistic expectations, but shoot, should we even load the bus, get on the plane? I mean, what are you telling your other kids? It's just weird. Or what are you telling your current kids? It's weird to me. It's just weird. Show up with some confidence to your weekly press conferences, Hugh. Come on. Offensively, Auburn's just been awful. Awful. Specifically in the passing game. I mean, they only threw for 67 more yards than I did last Saturday, and I was sitting on my couch. 67 total yards is what they threw for last week. It's bad. 67 yards in College Station. Against an A&M secondary, it's not any good. Does Auburn make a move at quarterback from Peyton Thorne to Robbie Ashford or even the freshman Holden Gerner? I don't know. Your next two games are rough to be throwing them into that. Do you throw them into that fire? I don't really think there's a right or wrong answer. And I usually have an opinion on a lot of things. But moving to Georgia, Georgia's been really beat up through 4 weeks. That's really been their notable news. Kirby mentioned guys early in the week. Safety Javon Bullard, defensive lineman Michael Williams, wide receiver Ladd McConkey, running back Kendall Milton, and other running back Roderick Robinson are still questionable heading into the weekend. I think you'll see Kendall Milton and Michael Williams play this week. I feel like that. From what I've heard, I feel like they'll play. Defensively, Georgia's still Georgia. Hasn't been overly tested, but they're a good unit. Leading the conference in scoring defense again, but injuries are starting to mount. I still think if this defensive line can stay healthy, them or Texas are going to have the best defensive line in the country at the end of the year. I truly believe that. Offensively, Dogs are trying to get a feel of what they want to be. New OC Mike Bobo, who Georgia fans are obviously familiar with, starting to get comfortable with the personnel, what he feels comfortable his personnel can do. I know Georgia fans will be impatient, but they've had a couple weeks to iron it out. Now you're taking the show on the road. Besides getting healthy, a place Georgia could get better at, I mentioned it earlier, red zone offense. They got to start converting red zone trips into touchdowns. That's a big part of the game today and can really come back to haunt you in games where teams have equal talent. I mean, look at Arkansas last week. If they score another touchdown in the red zone, they probably win the game. If they score a second touchdown in the red zone instead of settling for a field goal, they definitely win the game. Red zone offense. People are willing to give up yards to the 20s. You got to finish in the red zone. But look, Georgia's by far the better team, but this is the first road game of the year for the Dogs. They still have some things to iron out. Auburn should be fired up with the support of the Jordan Hare crowd behind them. That's going to be a massive, I think, difference. I think Georgia could start off a little slow in this one offensively for sure. But if you're Auburn, to have a chance to pull off the upset in this one, you have to have a chance in the fourth quarter. You got to be there in the fourth quarter. And if you're Georgia, you want to see your offense start operating at a high level in a hostile environment. How does Carson Beck respond? But where this game will be won is Georgia's defensive front versus Auburn's offensive line. Look, this is probably the easiest word it'll be won all week in the SEC for me on this show. Auburn's offensive line is just not good. It's just not a good unit. Then you throw in quarterbacks are taking unnecessary sacks, and it's just a combination of stuff. It's just a recipe for disaster. I mean, if you're Auburn, I think you just got to feed Jarquez Hunter, the running back, who I like a lot. I really do. I think you just got to shorten the game, try to have it within a score or two, keep it under 10 heading into the fourth quarter, and you never know, especially at Jordan Hare. Especially when the sun starts going down underneath the stadium. It gets a little creepy if you've ever been there. I'm telling you, weird things happen. I'm not ready to say it's going to be an upset, but I would roll with Jarquez Hunter here. My quarterback's not losing this game for me. As many touches as he can get, I think, gives Auburn the best chance to win, stay ahead of the chains. Now, you may run into a brick wall a few times, but you got to be patient. But it's better than taking sacks, being 2nd and 12, 2nd and 15, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15. This one's simple. If Auburn has any chance in this game, the small chance they have, the offensive line will have to play the best game they've ever played. Also, play calling, like I just mentioned, is going to have to be very patient. Prediction. I think it's going to be a game where Georgia fans are moaning after another week, wondering why they just didn't bury Auburn. Probably another big bash fest of Mike Bobo. But everyone relax. Auburn's going to be motivated to play at home in their first SEC game against one of their biggest rivals. It's Georgia's first road game. The operation's going on the road for the first time. There's going to be a little bit of adjustment. I do think Auburn is going to look a little better offensively. How could they not? They can't be worse. They're going to add in some new wrinkles. Don't be surprised if Hugh Freeze got involved this week a little bit in play calling. I'm telling you, do not be surprised at all. Auburn has to start fast, though. It's imperative. Like Rusty mentioned, Kirby's never been about stylistic points. He knows as long as they don't turn the ball over, Auburn's not going to score enough to win. As long as they don't give up a special team score and turn the ball over, Georgia should win this game. They're beat up, Georgia is. And I think Georgia just tries to get out of this one without any other injuries. I think it's an ugly game, but Georgia gets their 7th straight win over the Auburn Tigers. Give me Georgia 28-10 in this one. Moving on to the next one, South Carolina at Tennessee. setting the tone for you here. Tennessee needs this game. Remember when I told you 2 weeks ago, Florida was the team with their backs against the wall when Tennessee rolled into the swamp. Well, the roles are now reversed. Yes, South Carolina needs this game as well. But if you are going to rebuild off your 2022 campaign in Knoxville, this is a game you win at your house. This is a game Josh Heupel and his team needs. Revenge factor. It's at home. You're bringing out the all-black unis. You have numerous matchup advantages. Come on, Tennessee. From a South Carolina side of things, what an opportunity to go get 2 wins in a row over Tennessee for Shane Beamer in his 3rd year. Plus, you would be 2-1 in the SEC. Not really in the SEC East race. I mean, you are, but you lose the tiebreaker in Georgia. But you show promise after a solid outing against Georgia in 2 weeks. It is what it is. It'd be a massive win for Shane Beamer. Also, it would also show the Clemson game last year is not some fluke. I mean, under Shane Beamer at South Carolina, they struggled to play on the road outside of the Clemson game last year. The Gamecocks have a wild card in this one, though. I mean, Spencer Rattler, you can make an argument. I think he's been playing the best. He's been the best quarterback in the SEC so far, especially when you factor his lack of protection around him, just overall weapons. Officially, though, Juice Wells, he's officially out of this one. So that's a rough one for South Carolina. But where this one will be won, I think it's going to be Tennessee's defensive line versus South Carolina's offensive line. Look, Rodney Garner's group did not play well in Gainesville 2 weeks ago, and they will be the first to tell you that. This is actually a pretty good unit, though, who can disrupt the passer. They don't do a lot of things up front, but I think they're better than the guys they'll be going against in their one-on-one battles in South Carolina's offensive line. Sacks aren't everything, but the Vols lead the conference in sacks per game, and South Carolina's offensive line is the worst in the conference in sacks allowed. This is just not a good matchup for the Gamecock offensive line, in my opinion. Dow Logan's the offensive coordinator for South Carolina, smart guy. And he knows that the offensive game plan going into this one will be something to watch. Let's roll into it, guys. Prediction. Tennessee's at home, game they have to have. The revenge factor is real. No matter what Tennessee has said all week, they're not thinking about that. They're just thinking about winning this football game. You know, behind the scenes, Josh Heupel's saying, hey, guys, these guys ruined our chance to go to the college football playoff last year. Night game in Neyland. Fans will be desperate as well. It's the exact role reversal they had against Florida last week, but their backs are against the wall at home. So Tennessee needs this one, guys. Not saying South Carolina won't get some plays themselves offensively, but consistently win the line of scrimmage on the offensive side of the ball will be tough for South Carolina, in my opinion. Rattler's going to have to get the ball out quick and see if Tennessee secondary can tackle. You can't sit back there all day. I don't think you're going to have that time. The key to this, in my opinion, is getting Tennessee off to a hot start. I think Josh Heupel knows that. I think them probably watching the game, going back, reviewing the South Carolina-Mississippi State game from this last week. You know Heupel, Joe Milton, and those other receivers see opportunities downfield for them to go get back on track offensively. I think this is a perfect get-right game for Tennessee at home. I've been confident all offseason with Tennessee would win this one. I said it was my number one most confident conference game going into the season back in late July. I'm not changing it now. Give me the Vols, 38-14 under the lights at Neyland. Big win, get-right win for the Tennessee Vols and the Tennessee program. Couple more games for you here, guys. What do we got? We got 2 more. Yep. Going to game in Starkville, Alabama, Mississippi State, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ESPN. Alabama's currently favored by 14.5. Setting the tone, Alabama's first true road game of the season. How do they react? That's something that comes to my mind. South Florida, they went on the road, but there was more crimson in the stands than there was green. Let's call it what it is. I mean, it's not even a full road effect either because Alabama's going to stay the night in their own team hotel in Tuscaloosa and bus over the 80 miles. So really their first road test when they're on the road, staying in a place they're not familiar with. That'll be next week in College Station. How does this Alabama offense handle this? What will the offensive identity look like? You could tell last week they went more 12 personnel, using Dupree at tight end and Nyblack at tight end, ran Milroe off the tackle some. Do we start seeing Tommy Reese using Jalen Milroe between the tackles, some more design runs? I'm just really intrigued. To see how this offense, when they take the show on the road, performs in probably going to be a hostile environment. One of the more under-radar hostile environments when you factor in the cowbells in Starkville. Now the defense is probably the best defense Alabama's had in the last 5 years. It's probably not even that close. Mississippi State coming to this one after back-to-back losses where both the offense and defense have just looked poor over the last 2 weeks. I hate to say it, but State, surprising with the Zach Arnett-led team, they look soft right now. They look Charmin soft right now. Arnett in the past had physical, aggressive defense, but this group just looks tentative. They got to fix that. Offensively, this team's in an identity crisis. Do they want to be a Kevin Barbay offense? They want to play to Will Rogers' strengths. They want to incorporate some of the spread stuff still. I think it's really a combination of the playing within the Will Rogers strength and Kevin Barbay offense. They looked better last week. But, I mean, do we see Will Rogers throwing the ball 26 to 29 times, or do we see them throwing the ball 48 times like they did 48 times last week against South Carolina? I doubt they do that against Alabama because that would not be good because Alabama probably is the best edge rushers in the league. Will Rogers had a very grip it and rip it type attitude last week in Columbia, but it worked for him. In that one. Where this game will be won. Alabama's front versus Mississippi State offensive line. Look, there's a lot of poor play on the offensive line going around the SEC and in college football in general. Outside of LSU and Georgia, everyone has had their struggles up front on the offensive line. State's no stranger to this either, and I have a hard time seeing them blocking Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, Jaheim Otis, and Tim Keenan up front. Alabama right now is the best defense in the SEC. Will they be at the end of the year when Georgia starts to get a little healthier? I don't know, but right now they are. I don't think Bama's going to have to commit 8-9 guys in the box to stop Mississippi State's run game. Another thing is Jarquavius Woody March going to be healthy. How healthy is he in this game? That's going to be key because I think he's one of their best playmakers outside of Kedrick Griffin. I do not see State having much success on offense late Saturday night. Then let's just say State is protecting better than we anticipate. Alabama's not getting home to Will Rogers. What happens on the outside? Or what weapons on the outside, I should say, scare you if you're Alabama? Like I just mentioned, Kedrick Griffin. Good player, but I think Bama feels like Kool-Aid McKinstry or Terrion Arnold can handle him by themselves. This is just another simple where it will be won. It's just I think Alabama's defensive front's better than Mississippi State's offensive line. I've tried to tell Mississippi State fans going into the season, there's going to be a transition standpoint, from a footwork standpoint, from just a timing standpoint of the offensive line. I know you have 4 starters back, but it's a new system. But prediction here, guys. Prediction on this one. Is this year Mississippi State will be competitive against Alabama? It's all relative, and I think this is the year State could compete to an extent with it being at home. Alabama's offense being somewhat inconsistent. Bama's going to win a lot of games sluggish, ugly, low-scoring fashion, though, this year. I think they are. I think 2009, 2011, right? Rusty said, some teams win 24-10. It's only a 2-score game, but it was actually dominant. You never felt like it was really in question. I think a game like this, I think this is one of those games. This is a game I think it'll be close at the half. Bama pulls away middle of the fourth quarter. When I say pull away, Bama gets up 2 scores, kind of sits on it, just tries not to turn the ball over. Again, that's not a lot, but for this Mississippi State offense against this Alabama defense, a 2-score game in the second half is going to be a lot for them to overcome. Give me Alabama 27-10. And then we're into our last one, guys. Last preview, Missouri at Vanderbilt, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on the SEC Network. Missouri favored by 13 right now. Setting the tone. Missouri rolling in 4-0 into Nashville with a chance to get to 5-0 with a showdown. We mentioned it earlier against LSU on the horizon next week in Como. Tread lightly here, Eli Drinkwitz. Do not let your team overlook this road trip because they're looking ahead to a crazy environment that will ensue on their campus next week. With that being said, Vanderbilt is not a good football team. I would love to be in the defensive meeting rooms this week over at Vanderbilt and ask them how they plan to cover Luther Burden. I would. This is the best receiver they've seen this year so far. Would absolutely love to hear that answer. On the other side of things, if I'm Vandy and our season is hanging on a brink right now, I'm going to try something different. I might talk about changing up defensively because I think your defense is bad. It is what it is. But you got to change it up a little. You can't go tempo, try to get as many plays as possible on offense. You got to try to slow the game down, limit possessions, especially with the clock rules now. I'll be interested to see if Vanderbilt does that. Will they? We'll have to see. I'm not overly confident they will. But where it'll be won, Missouri's wide receivers, Luther Burden, Mookie Cooper, Theo Weiss versus Vandy's DBs. Look, Kentucky has weapons on the outside. Obviously with Berrien Brown and Dane Key, but the Mizzou offense is just clicking better overall right now. Mizzou at heart wants to establish the run, and actually Cody Schrader, their running back, leads the SEC in rushing. This is the best wide receiver group that Vandy has faced, and I know Kentucky has a good one, but right now it's just clicking right now, especially when you factor in how well Brady Cook's played the last 2 weeks. I just think it's going to be their biggest challenge Vanderbilt's had all year, and they've been poor on defense already. I just think if this game does get close, Missouri can just go back into the air whenever they want. Prediction, we will be watching, but I expect most around the country will not be, and I can't say I blame them. This is a total trap game for Missouri, but Vanderbilt is just not going to be able to capitalize. If Vandy threatens it all, like I just mentioned, Missouri can always just go to their Air Force and attack through the air. I mean, if we're going military analogies here, they'll just call in the Air Force, Luther Burden, Mookie Cooper, Theo Weiss. They'll go do what they want through the air if it gets close. I mean, Vandy's only shot in this game is to slow the game down and hope Brady Cook or you have some timely forced turnovers. That's it. It's your only chance. I do not see both of those things happening, and I think both would have to happen. Therefore, I think Missouri could sleepwalk through this game, sleep all the way down Broadway on Saturday afternoon. I think Missouri gets a 42-17 win. So those are all 7 matchups. I think this is the first week all year we've had all 14 teams in conference action. Exciting times. I know we've gone a little bit over, gone an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes. We got, hey, it's weekend gambling stuff now, baby. It's money-making Wednesday, which then turns into money-making weekend. Again, we're 49%, boys. And girls. We're 49% on the season. I want to be in that 60% range. We went 9-4-1 last week. I told you, more film equals more money. But here's the bets I like right here. I think we got, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got 9 this week. First, we talked about it. We got 3 conference games I'm going to talk about here. Florida, give me Florida +3 at Kentucky. I think Florida wins the game straight up. I got it early in the week at +3. It's down to 1.5 now. I like Florida straight up. I just like Florida on both sides of the line of scrimmage better. Give me the Gators straight up, and then if you want to give me 3, which I'm taking, give me the 3. I got Florida +3. Tennessee, give me the -12.5 for South Carolina. I think Tennessee makes a statement here. They're not as bad as they showed in Gainesville. They have this game circled. Revenge factor. South Carolina ruined Tennessee's season last year. Hendon Hooker went down in that game. You couldn't make up a worse game for Tennessee last year. I hadn't seen anything like that in a while. Neyland Stadium's going to be rocking. The black jerseys. South Carolina's offensive line is not going to be able to protect. They lead the conference in sacks allowed. Tennessee leads the conference in sacks. Give me Tennessee big. Tennessee big in this one, -12.5. We just talked about this one. Give me Missouri -13 at Vandy. Give me Missouri -13 at Vandy. Vandy's not going to win a conference game. I had them over under 3.5 win total for the season. I was totally wrong on that one. Missouri double digits easily. May be able to name the score. They can. I usually don't say this. They could sleepwalk down Broadway Street in this one at Nashville this week. Give me Missouri -13. Auburn and Georgia, not taking the line. I'm going the under 47 here. Going under the 47. I think it's going to be an ugly game. Georgia's going to get a lead. Sit on it. Kirby knows, like Rusty mentioned, just don't turn the ball over. We're going to not lose this game. I would be shocked if Auburn scores more than 14 points offensively. Give me the under 47 here. Texas giving up 16.5 versus Kansas the week before the Red River rivalry against Oklahoma. Kansas rolls in undefeated. Jalen Daniels doing his thing at quarterback. Texas is just good, though, guys. Go watch their defensive line. Devondre Sweat. Guys, just a really good defensive line for Texas. It's at home. Give me Texas big. I like Texas. I think they cover the -16.5. Michigan at Nebraska. Give me the under 40. Michigan doesn't like to run up the score. Nebraska can't score. It's at Nebraska. Sluggish, slow game. Give me the under 40 in this one. BYU, this is a Friday night matchup. Giving up 1.5, favored by 1.5 versus Cincy. This is a Big 12 matchup between the 2 new kids on the block in the Big 12. Give me BYU -2.5 in this one. I love it. I actually love this one. Feel real confident in this one. Then Iowa State. We just talked about the Red River rivalry. Obviously, I know Iowa State's not involved in that, but they do head to Norman this week. Does Brent Venables have that team, or is it a mature group that's going to be able to handle that before a big-time matchup? Does Iowa State spoil it? I think it's going to be closer than people think. Give me the Cyclones +21. I think one of Texas and Oklahoma struggled this week. Not ready to say they're going to lose. I think it's going to be Oklahoma. I trust Texas more. But give me Iowa State and the Cyclones. Matt Campbell and the boys holding it down in Ames, Iowa. I know the game's not in Ames. It's in Norman. But give me +21. And then finally, my only first half bet of the week, Fresno State -13.5 against one of the worst teams in college football in Nevada. Fresno State's going to be up by 2 touchdowns or more at half. Guarantee it. Fresno State's been looking actually pretty good if you watch college football late at night. But those are the lines. Those are my money-making Wednesday bets, money-making weekends for you. Give me Florida +3 at Kentucky. Tennessee big. Give me the -12.5 for South Carolina. Missouri also big, -13 at Vandy. Auburn, Georgia under 47. Texas -16.5 versus Kansas. Michigan and Nebraska under 40 in Lincoln. BYU -1.5 for Cincinnati on Friday night. Both teams, Big 12 action there, new kids on the block. I think Oklahoma's going to be looking ahead to the Red River rivalry next week. at home. It's going to be closer than people think. Give me Iowa State plus 21 in that one. And then Fresno State playing really good football. Give me minus 13.5 in the first half versus a really bad Nevada team. But guys, a little bit longer episode for us here, but we covered a ton, man. Covered a ton. We told you Connor Weigman out for the season for Texas A&M, unfortunately. I think Max Johnson could be a plug and play, though. We had Carter Bryant coming in, talking all things LSU, previewed the Ole Miss game with us. We also had Rusty Mansell come on from DawgsHQ, come on, talk about Georgia, Kirby Smart, what he thinks, why Georgia doesn't win the national championship, why would that be? We previewed all 7 matchups. Remember, all 14 teams in the SEC this week are in action. Then I gave you my money-making Wednesday, money-making weekend bets. There's 9 of them, guys. We're at 49%. We'll be at 60 before we know it. Remember, the old saying in 2023, more film equals more money for us, guys. But again, I know this episode was brought to you on Wednesday here. On this episode of appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mock 10 Sports. You have a fantastic weekend.